2, 1, and welcome back. We're here for another episode of Awesome Stuff Badly with me, Uncle Dr. Ernie. I'm joined today by my good friend, Mr. Jolly Chen, a classmate of mine from the old days back at MIT. Can you say hi, Jolly?
Hey, everybody.
Hey, I haven't actually checked to find out whether people can hear your voice, so they may just be hearing blank space, but we'll just go with it, because that's how we roll on Awesome Stuff Badly. And let me go ahead and start with prayer. God, I just thank you for this amazing day, chance to work on cool stuff with wonderful people. Thank you for the great session I had with Miss Whitney earlier this morning. Pray that this would be a fun and educational time for Jolly and I, that we would learn things, that we would build things, and actually get some work done along the way. Thank you that all we have to do is be faithful, and you'll take care of the consequences. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so let's get started. So this is a good chance to walk through the project. Now, have you done any JavaScript at all?
A little bit.
Okay, and have you heard of CoffeeScript?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That is that thing. So what I have here is this project that we're doing as an alternative to the Hour of Code. We call it the Hour of Node. And the key thing that we're trying to do at the Swan Factory is something I call document-driven programming. The idea is that traditional programming is done with languages, which have lots of syntax that you have to learn, and lots of special cases about which things you can do where, lots of context you have to keep in your head. So the goal of document-driven programming is trying to put all the logic in really simple documents, which are basically just dictionaries and arrays, or property lists. And then there's a very basic runtime that interprets those things that actually does all the work out in the world. So that's the basic project we're in. And so the actual sort of runtime for our project is a very simple main that just creates the world. And I think I warned you before, there's lots of really bad puns or deep metaphors, depending on how you want to look at it. Right, God creates the world, then we interact with the world here. And our world object is essentially a property list. It's a way to get and set values and inherit the scope of those values. So the key thing is this idea of cascading contexts, as I'm now calling it, where it's a dictionary, but if the dictionary doesn't have the value, it'll look in its parent dictionary and work its way up there. And we also use dynamic properties so that if you call a function, if you get a function, it'll just return the value. So I don't have to keep track about whether it's a static value or a dynamic property. It'll just be handled automatically on the fly. That's the basic, and then everything is these worlds. So we're basically using our config file here to basically create a bunch of worlds that know how to draw themselves and interact. And so everything we're doing on the screen here that you're seeing.
Can I interrupt and ask?
Oh yes, please.
Question? So is a world you call it a document? Is that like a class? Multiple instances of these things?
So yeah, so everything is an instance of this world class. So this is a CoffeeScript class, which is a little syntactic sugar around JavaScript prototypes. And it creates, so every time I create a new world, it is an instance of this class, which has these methods.
Okay.
And they're all part of an inheritance hierarchy. Yeah.
So I understand OO concepts. I understand those things. I'm just thinking, like, if I were new to this, that a world is a type of thing that I can make.
Right. Everything that you interact with is basically a world.
Okay.
So when I create, conceptually what we're trying to do is, as I build this thing, I'm building it using these dictionaries, and then these dictionaries will be exposed in the interface in some meaningful way so that kids can rearrange the programming of it as part of the experience of programming this environment. So we're going to try and see if we can start building some of that today. Mostly I've been building the infrastructure to create these documents. And so one way to think about that is so when we create our turtle document, it has some common behavior here at the top, like how it calculates an angle or how it draws a path. And then each of the individual turtles has a little dictionary describing what's unique about it, right? And if you know, you think of this, okay, this is the class, and these are the instances. If not, you just think about...
Go back to what you haven't described turtles yet, so we're just talking about worlds.
So turtles. These pictures you see over here are these turtles.
Yep.
Right. So one kind of world is a turtle.
Turtle is a kind of world.
Yeah.
I see.
So the top level, in fact, our turtles world is the one that contains all the common functionality common to all turtles. Is that they have an angle, they have a vector of their heading, they have a color, and they have a path which draws, actually two different paths that draw the turtle, and they have these actions that they can perform, which we'll be getting to momentarily. So these are the things that a turtle has and a turtle can do. And this top level here describes turtles generically, and then each specific turtle has its own little characteristics that describe. So that's why this one is light green, this one is dark green.
Okay, I see in your methods there that they all take a world
as a parameter. Yeah.
Parameter that is passed in.
Yes.
Okay. So they're really independent of the world in which they move.
Well, the way the CoffeeScript works, right, this is an implementation detail that leaks through into this document, is that there is no implicit self available in dictionaries. Right? This is just a JSON file. This is just a dictionary that happens to contain a bunch of values. And it has no concept of the world. And so whenever I want to create a dynamic property or an actual function that I'll be calling with arguments, I have to explicitly create it as a closure in JavaScript or a function in JavaScript. And then when it's invoked by the world, it fills in those properties.
I see. So this turtle is not like a subclass of world.
It's not. There's only one class, which is world, and everything is an instance of world. So this is the little sleight of hand, which is why it's easier to explain to someone who knows nothing than to someone who actually understands things, is that, the top level turtles thing is an instance of world, and my individual turtle instances, and a single concrete turtle is also an instance of a world. So everything that you see here that's a dictionary gets turned into a world. And that my world basically creates its own inheritance hierarchy. So in some sense, there is no JavaScript inheritance hierarchy going on. I am manually implementing my own inheritance hierarchy using some very simple pieces of CoffeeScript and JavaScript. And then I am using and abusing it in several interesting ways, which we can get into if it becomes relevant. One thing I should probably, actually, this is what I was working on the last episode, which is that what I do then is my drawing object just takes that document and it just traverses down the hierarchy and draws all the elements. So if it basically just goes through each of the worlds, and if it has children, it draws the children. Otherwise, it draws the path. Let me just make that draw self, because that's actually more consistent here, or more parallel. That still works? Yes, that still works. So it's good to read code because it actually forces you to make it a little bit more linguistically meaningful. And so my drawing object is, the basic methods here are the world, my main, the world, the God object that creates the world, and my drawing object, and then everything else is essentially these configuration dictionaries. So this is the top level configuration dictionary, which describes the size of the world, and then has children for all the other worlds that are drawn and created.
So is this all the under the cover stuff? This is not what kids would edit, or
the kids would not be editing this directly. The idea and kind of the whole project is to build a really simple runtime that I can program using documents. Because once I'm doing document-based programming, it's really trivial, I'm hoping, to create a graphical interface on top of that, right? Because trying to put a graphical interface on top of a programming language has been ridiculously hard. People have tried for 40 years. Pretty much all of them suck. So what we're going to do is, but putting a graphical interface on top of a document should be way simpler. And so by programming this thing as a
paradigm that the kids are using, this is the implementation of the runtime.
Right. This is the semantics the children will be using, but there's a one-to-one mapping, or at least there will be a pretty close mapping. Let's call it a very thin mapping between these documents and the visual controls the children are using. And that's what we're going to try and build in the next session, next half hour, if we can pull it off. Let me go ahead and set the timer on this since I got a lunch meeting that I should be at. And boom, 31 minutes from now, we'll see how far we can get. All right. Any other questions, or shall I dig into it and then you can ask specific?
Sorry, these are beginning questions.
What?
Sorry, these are.
No, this is excellent because these half the problem is me figuring out how to explain this thing that's been stuck in my head for 4 years, and so all the opportunities I get to have those discussions are useful work. So the thing we're going to work on now is the controls. So right now I've got only one control, which is this label here that shows me which turtle I've clicked on. Not very exciting. It is cool for me. I did tell you there's one little game we had to play with the inheritance hierarchy. That is normally when a function here looks to do something, it will just look up its hierarchy to its world hierarchy to see how to resolve a value. But if I want to say, I want each individual child turtle to have a clicking argument, what it would do was also add a clicking argument to the enclosing view, the enclosing graphics context. Nice thing is you can see all this right here in the graphics hierarchy for SVG. You can see all these, the paths and the names all right there. So the nice thing is that the runtime is basically documented. You get to see exactly what's going on at every stage. And we're using the same hierarchy for our lexical inheritance and for our world. But if they don't line up, I insert this little thing called an authority, which is basically the do what I say, not what I do method, where it says all the children will inherit this click as part of their hierarchy, but it's not actually present in the overall context, so that I don't accidentally click on my super view and set the name to something else. It's a little weird, but it actually makes the code much more elegant. I have the same thing over here in my controls, where the top level context for my controls is just, transform the world so that I move all the way over to the right so that these things appear to the side of my grid. But the children use a different algorithm based on rows and columns, where they calculate the offset from the enclosing view using these row and call methods. And that's what these things are. They draw the little gray boxes in based on those row and column positions. So what we're going to do today, and the other thing I mentioned, I don't know if I talked to you about this, was reactive coffee. And the idea of reactive coffee is that you can just declaratively say, basically a publish subscribe mechanism that these values should be dynamically created. And so whenever when I click on this turtle here and change the value named current, then it will automatically it'll automatically rerun this method. Actually, not quite automatically, and that's probably worth almost automatically, by using this thing called a bind. And using Reactive Coffee's bind method means get this value, but if the value changes, get it again. So it creates a subscribe implicitly when I do this bind. Is that making any sense?
It does. It does. But
it's a little bit magical, and I think I 90% understand it by now, but I periodically beat my head against it, and if it becomes a problem, we will dig into it more deeply. So let me go ahead and specify exactly what we're going to try and do today. So what we're going to try and do is start controlling our turtle. So what we want is to have 3 of these guys here, and let's give them a name, I guess. Is really what we need here. We want them to have the names. Let's make that there as our kind of preface. Name colon left. Then colon go. And name colon right. Okay. And that's a little too, let's just now we will need to figure out the right spacing and sizes and whether it should be arrows or text or whatever, but at least we've got the right basic things going on there. And we have what's called a gulp file. It's like a rake file or a make file that automatically runs my tests and reloads the page every time I save the file, which is pretty cool.
How come now it says for NA?
NA, because if nothing's clicked on it, the default is NA.
I see.
Which I guess should be N/A. If you want to change that, we just go into default for current and that. Let me go and save that. All right. Now this is where it starts getting interesting. What we want to have happen, let me close some of these files so we can focus in on what we're trying to do, is we know our turtles have these go and turn methods. And what I did before is I kind of hand configured all these things to click a bunch of stuff, and now I don't even understand what I did back then because that's where I got stuck and had to start over again. So what I want to do is basically, let's start with the go method first. I want to be able to tell the turtle to go. And what I want to do is actually tell the active turtle to go. So the first thing I should do is change current from being a string to being a what I want it to be. I want it to be an object. So if I go back, I do have to go back to my config here and just set that to undefined and make my control be or so that still does the same thing, but object. Oh, I want to do. Actually, no, I should probably do a bit more in here. This will be. So current equals. I'll get current. And then. Let's just make this. Let's get rid of the extra stringiness because that's just confusing me. Maybe not. Okay. Equals. There's nothing, but when I have to change my turtle click, instead of putting the label, I should actually put the world as the value. And then let's just check and make sure my tests run still. Yes, all the tests are running, which is good. Oops. Now, when I click on this, okay, that's a problem. And the reason is where's the error? Let's just check where the error is. My turtle click. Undefined. I think when it gets to undefined, it actually doesn't do anything. So this is the thing that whatever it wants, whatever it gets, it should just return NA. Let's try that. Look at the JavaScript. Oh, should be. Why am I doing world get current again? That doesn't make any sense, does it? Let's just see what happens if I try that. Okay, here it's an NA. Ah, excellent. That actually looks pretty decent. In fact, that gets rid of our with our prefix, so we'll just say world, and then say, and then we can make this actually more intelligent. You kind of following me there, Jelly?
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Why does it say world colon?
Oh, that's just the way I define my world. When I stringify it,
when you stringify your object?
Yeah, so that's just in the...
Is there a friendly name that you can ask for it?
You can just get the label, but that's way if I'm... that way I know it's a world rather than a string or something else. So that would be the alternative,
right.
But...
Maybe you want to just print out the label there.
Yeah, we could. Want to do that? Let's do it. Okay. Where is my control? Control here is, right, then it becomes current.label. Nope, I didn't like it. Oh, I see. Yes, the reason that this works well is that if I have something else in there, it renders it properly. So by just using the generic to string function, I don't have to worry about it. So this is not ideal as an interface thing, but it's probably actually better from a debugging perspective, so I know what's in there. And ideally, you probably actually wanted to draw a little copy of the turtle showing you what the active environment is, but not today's problem. Okay. Now, what I want it to do is invoke these methods here.
Now you have the correct current object.
Yes, I have an actual object in current, assuming that it's, and I have at least a function that I can call. So if there's nothing for it to do, at least it'll. Okay, so what I want now is to actually start.
It's possible your object is just a string.
Sorry?
It's also possible that your object is just a string because you
actually no, because my default config is in fact a function.
Line 19.
Oh, but it doesn't have any properties. Right, that was my problem. What I really want this to be is to be something that has properties which are functions.
Right now it's just a string, right?
Yeah, you're right. So that's going to be a problem at some point. But I'm not sure what it needs to be, so I'll go back and then mock it up later. Let's do with Go, which is simple. So the simplest thing is we want this to be something like action colon Go 1, where it's going to give it a, let's just do this here, right? So this will be something like turn 1, and this will be like turn -1.
How does it know to invoke that on the current object?
It doesn't do anything yet, right? This is just specifying it declaratively what the action associated with that button is.
I see.
Right? So then what we need is a click. And that doesn't go in our parent context, that goes in our authority. That one we want to do a click. And this is, there's a little wart here where this guy is in a different authority, but I don't want to deal with that right now. And that's going to look something like our turtle click. Use that as our template. We have it here. So it'll look a lot like our. So we're going to take current equals get current. And so and we also should be getting as world dot get action. So let's do this here. Doesn't crash anything. Awesome. And when I click on this, what is me? And do I get any in there? No, it's from last time. Let's rerun that. And clear this, and then when I click, no, not clicking. Those guys are fine. And then if I click on this, yay, it's clicking the button. You see that?
Yep.
Cool. So we've got an object. Let's run it. So we do that would be something then. It'll be like current.call action 0, action 1. Those are our argument lists. And let's actually go see make sure that that's, is that actually what's happening? What's expecting? What does it actually want to have happen there? No, it's just actually expecting a dictionary. So the world should be the first element, which is fine. Second element is expected to be a dictionary, because that's the way JavaScript prefers to pass parameters. So that's actually not a bad thing, because then we can be more explicit in our You see that?
Yeah.
And it's expecting dir, which is a little bit of crosstalk. If I had a type checker, I'd be less worried about it, but that's a future project. But yeah. And it's actually good in the sense that if we don't actually give it the thing it's expecting, it'll give us some crazy error. Actually, we can just access the should assert. We don't have type checking. Awesome. In fact, some of these parentheses to be more idiomatic and readable code. This is our poor man's transformation matrix. Okay, let's save that first. And let's see what happens. So we're here. Can't find variable assert. Oh, right, because we didn't include that in our. That's worth doing, I think. No. Okay. Oh, reset, yes, because I changed that to be update in my previous programming sessions. And okay, undefined is not a function. Oh, no world, right? Okay, so that was what we call a partial success. In that I think we're actually generating the thing we want. And a couple things. One is whether
the current.call not do the right thing?
The current.call is doing the right thing. And in fact, we can check that really quickly. Go here. I get the world here. And I should be able to see. I have to go into the world is a complicated object containing a document, which is the reactive object containing the values. And you should see that it's gone from its initial value of 2.5, 1.5 to 2.5. So it is actually changing the turtle. The reason we're not seeing that is because of our drawing method. So you may notice I had a world bind here where it gets the name. And what's happening is that the world.bind is not, we are dynamically binding the name to this SVG element, so that the framework knows to redraw it when the name changes.
Mm-hmm.
So what I need to be doing is actually this dictionary here needs to be rebound so that actually it's the transformation here that is actually the problem, because that's what determines where the thing gets drawn. So let me just emphasize this because I actually find it harder to see otherwise. So I'm not sure that works, but that's the thing we need to test. Oops, no world. Whoa! Did you see that?
I saw that.
Whoa! Happy dance, happy dance, happy dance, happy dance. And let's try turning it. Okay, there's some weirdness going on there. The angle's not being set properly. Yeah, that was strange. It turned and then it stopped turning. So anyway, yay, it's happening. That's cool. We should do a couple of things for our own sake. First one is, just stop and take a deep breath. Yay, it's working. So nice. So nice. Second thing is we should set the no world thing to either be more intelligent or just not be run at all. Which will then throw an error, which is great. And what we want to do is then make sure it's always set.
Maybe you need a null.
Sorry? What we want to do is somewhere when we are, possibly when we is, this isn't just a question, we want some way to actually set it. So there's the tricky part. If I set this to undefined, then it will be confusing. So what I should do is, I need to find a place to set it where it's not set. And maybe the right place to do it is, in fact, my control here. This is where these whole questions of local knowledge gets really dicey, because if it's not, is that this guy doesn't know anything about all my children. So what it's expecting is a world. I know what we could do. We can make this a dynamic property. That's the simplest way to do it. So the world should be, it takes a world, and it should say world now this is typically going to be called from, the only place it's going to be called is from the controls. Right, so it'll be called from here, which is a child of this is not a trivial thing. Is there a quick hack I can use to get around this problem? Yes. That would be world.get get child turtles, I may not have a get child, but I've been thinking about it for a while. I have add child and has children and map children. No, let's just do map children, right? I don't really care how they do this. No, I have to get the turtle child. That's why I need get child. Children is an array, not a dictionary. So there's two ways to do this right. And no way that I can think of to do it quickly without violating all my encapsulation.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't try it right now.
What? We'll just not worry about it. We just decide we're just gonna.
Probably not worry about it right now.
Yeah.
So it seems like you're not really aided much by the dynamic typing here. You're kind of hurt more by it.
What do you mean by the dynamic typing?
Well, working in a language where like you don't know what the type of the argument is.
You mean using reactive coffee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other language of the same similar property, where you're like, just what you just said a minute ago, you're like, oh, it's an array, not a property list kind of thing, right? You can very easily pass the wrong thing to it and have it explode.
Right. So the underlying language, I mean, it is also nice that I can also play games where I'm passing around functions and words and worlds and things that take different arguments.
Sure.
Yeah, but the environment that I plan to create is intended to be more rigorous. And so, so in theory, I could do something similar with TypeScript and get more clarity.
Right.
But I can't necessarily play as fast and loose as the distinction between dictionaries and objects. Plus, I don't even know TypeScript, so it's so steep enough. And the other thing is that the framework we're building on is reactive CoffeeScript. And so we're already committed to learning that. So, yeah, it is an interesting set of trade-offs. Now, okay, what have I done? Can I actually care about any of it? Should I just do it all? I should just undo it all. Okay, that was a quick hack, and we are running out of time. So, anyway, we have moving turtles.
Yeah.
We have turtles that can move. And they can't quite turn yet, but I can turn a little bit. They turn once and then they get confused, and that's probably just a minor typo. So that's what it's like. If you have some time, I'm here. Feel free to text me if you want to join on Google Hangout, or you can just watch me on Twitch TV.
Cool.
Thanks for joining me, and see you next time as we do more awesome stuff badly.